Manchester United are in Leipzig this evening. They need a point to secure their passage safely through to the knockout stages. There's much going on, not least concerning Paul Pogba, who is on the bench this evening. Miguel Delaney of the London Independent is with us. Evening, Miguel.
Evening.
So, Mino Raiola really got things moving yesterday. He was speaking to Italian media. There's no point beating about the bush. It's better to speak out clearly, look forward, avoid wasting time to find culprits. Paul is unhappy at Man United. He can't manage to express himself like he wants to and like people expect him to. He needs to change team. He needs a change of scenery. He has a contract that expires in a year and a half in the summer of 2022, but the best solution for all parties is a transfer in the next summer window. Mic drop, walk off, and that is the end, it seems, of Paul Pogba at Manchester United. It never quite worked.
Well, mic drop and player dropped. I mean, the thing about this is, obviously, there was a lot of criticism yesterday for Raiola for kind of doing this on the eve of a big game. But usually with a big game, for most of Pogba's time at Manchester United, you would have expected him to start. But of course, that hasn't been the case recently. And I think that almost plays in to what Raiola is doing. And almost it's in this kind of wider power game and almost to show we're the ones in control. When I think, as Jamie Carragher put on Sky last night, the reality is he hasn't been picked for games lately. Solskjaer's been barely using him. And it does point to the fact that, I suppose Manchester United would publicly play this down, they'd keep it low-key because that's basic negotiation. But United would be prepared to let him go at this point. And they were coming to maybe a slightly tricky decision with Pogba anyway, because his contract was running down. He has obviously been agitating for a move for some time. But then there's even the question, he'd obviously want a huge contract if they were to recommit. And funnily enough, someone was telling me yesterday, if United say were to bring in Allegri, Pogba would definitely stay. Not that I think that too many Manchester United fans would care about that at the moment. But obviously he'd want huge wages. United are at the point now where, despite all his commercial appeal, would it really be worth investing that many wages in what is now a circus around a good player, but a player that hasn't felt like he's lived up to his reputation at Manchester United? Secondly, it might force them into selling him. But, I mean, you're not going to get the 100 or 150 million you might have 2 years ago. And even then, it was a bit conditional. There's not that much of a market for him. And I think many people pointed out where Raiola's interview took place. It was with Tutto Sport in Turin. Now, that's because of their existing work with agents and the agents' prize. But even in saying that, there's obviously a political dimension there, because what I was told yesterday is that Raiola's first choice, I suppose this is the thing, I mean, how much can you detach Raiola's first choice from Pogba's first choice? But from what you hear, it very much is Pogba's first choice. It's to go back to Juventus. The only problem is, Juventus, because of COVID and because of wider situations where they have a lot of players on huge money that they can't shift, Aaron Ramsey being one, Sami Khedira being another. Khedira is almost their version of Mesut Ozil. They don't have funds for transfers, so they're highly dependent on a swap, which could be even, I mean, United don't usually go for swaps, but they could be a bit more amenable to it, because it just feels like this situation was coming to a head. And as you said there at the top of the segment, Joe, Mino's pushed it there.
There is absolutely a face-saving point to all of this. You know, it's much easier to explain to the world and prospective buyers that, well, my client is on the bench because he has announced he wants to leave, as opposed to he's not playing on merit because his performances haven't been good enough for far too long at this stage. So, I mean, that is part of this equation. Do we know to what extent Manchester United were surprised, appalled, aghast at this breaking so publicly yesterday?
I think they didn't know it was coming, obviously, but with Raiola at this point, I think they're now well aware that
he fights dirty.
and it's for grabs, really. I mean, to be fair, the United did come under criticism for, what was put out in January about why they didn't sign Erling Haaland. Now, I still believe that was ultimately because he chose Dortmund. The player chose Dortmund ahead of United because he felt there was a better chance to play right now, or maybe a better progression for his career right now. But at the same time, part of that was the fact that Raiola's his agent. And I think United are increasingly conscious of what dealing with Raiola entails. I mean, and it's interesting, there are a few clubs around Europe who just would really rather not do business with him. Real Madrid are one. I don't think they've ever signed a Raiola player. Chelsea for a long time have been very, very reticent to get into negotiations with him, because even though he makes sure he gets good players, it feels like there's always this constant commotion around him, and a lot of it is driven by him. Now, his argument, of course, would be it's for his players' best. But in situations like Pogba's, I mean, you would wonder about the direction of Pogba's career in this sense, because, I mean, it's obviously a player with a lot of talent there, but there's always this lingering feeling that we haven't really seen the best of him. And it isn't, like, when you stand back as well, it is incredible in a situation where United have this must-win game, or not must-win game, but a game where they can't afford to lose tonight because of everything that would entail. It doesn't, even though, and this is a player who was signed to be the future of the club, world record signing, new direction for United, all the rest of it. And despite that, it's not really a big negative that he's not in the team tonight. And above anything, if he were to leave in January, most people at United wouldn't be too bothered either. And that is remarkable given all the fanfare when he joined.
It really is. There is no heat on Solskjaer this evening from Manchester United fans for leaving Pogba on the bench. This is not Mourinho with Pogba against Sevilla.
Well, the thing about that as well is, I mean, the more the story progresses, the more Mourinho is vindicated. And I think, like, I mean, obviously, I mean, I've been on the show in the past and kind of discussed, you know, criticisms of Solskjaer, but I'd have genuine sympathy from him in this situation, because I think he's almost stuck between two poles, in that Pogba has obviously been, up until recently, a very commercially valuable figure for the club. And then on the other side, he's got the kind of Raiola circus. And in between all that, what do you do with Pogba? So, I mean, yeah, again, it's difficult not to have sympathy with Solskjaer having to deal with all this. And I think, to be fair to him, he's been very strong throughout this. I mean, someone put it to me earlier this season, after the 6-1, when they lost to Spurs, it was put to me that by someone within the club that Solskjaer's got a problem with Pogba, not because he wants to leave necessarily, but at that point it was because he was playing in a deep-lying role in midfield, and Pogba sees himself as an attacker, or a kind of someone who can roam and create, and that Pogba's role in general was also causing an imbalance in midfield, and Solskjaer had a strong decision to make, and to be fair, he made that decision. He dropped Pogba after that, and I think that's to his credit. Yeah.
I mean, it's Bruno Fernandes or it's Pogba at the moment, and I don't think any Manchester United fans would pick Pogba. Pogba, and he is just so gifted and so talented, and you saw his goal even at the weekend. He can do things that Fernandes can't dream of doing, but he does them all too rarely, and Fernandes hits an exceptionally high level consistently, and therein lies the enigma of Pogba.
Well, this is it. I mean, there's almost that sense that he's kind of playing within himself or something like that, and the irony being that his best performances or best runs are when he's had to play in a role that warrants more discipline, that where he is a bit more within himself, which is basically for France and what has been for Juventus. I mean, that's when he's had a very specifically designed role, and it's not one that kind of involves his most lavish talents in a way that he seems to idealise. But I mean, it's when it gets to situations like this, you wonder whether at United the ego is basically too great for what he's actually done at the club. And I mean, you don't want to think like that, given but it's hard not to.
Very hard. I mean, it looks from the outside like he's prepared to fulfil that more defensive role to win a World Cup. But like week in, week out against West Brom, are you kidding me? No chance. That seems to be the attitude. So I don't know. And so like if Juventus isn't maybe the option he might have hoped it was, Real Madrid, Barcelona, financially, I don't know where they are. Maybe Pogba like pays for himself via jersey sales. I don't know, but like, where's he going to go? Paris?
So the big Spanish two, I think, unless there are some huge shifts there or sales, whatever, I think we can forget about them signing top players anytime soon, because they've got huge financial issues, and both almost have the same issue with Juventus, where they have these bloated squads, big stars and big money, aging stars and big money that they now can't shift. That's preventing them from rebuilding. And someone told me the other day that for all sorts of issues, not least the stadium rebuild, and because they want to sign a Galactico, Madrid couldn't ideally need to clear 150 million in the next few months. And they'll try and do that through sales, but there's not many takers. Now, I wonder in that, like, the player Madrid want above anyone else is Kylian Mbappe, but it's difficult to see them afford the 200 million or whatever it would take to get him now. You'd wonder maybe, given the contract situation, whether Pogba could be a kind of a cut price Galactico for them. But then there's a bit of tension in the club as well, apparently, over that, because while Zidane has always been a fan of Pogba, Florentino Perez hasn't been so warm towards him. And I think it's why they didn't move as strong as they might have in 2018 and 2019. But I mean, yeah, Paris again. I mean, they could do with another midfielder alongside Verratti in that way. It might just end up proving the most sensible option. I mean, it feels like it's the easy option to take, or an easy one to pick in that sense, but it might well just be the most logical.
For United fans just tuning in, it looks very much like that split strikers, 5 at the back tactic that Solskjaer quite likes away from home. So Tellez, Shaw will be one of the centre backs, I would hazard a guess, with Maguire, Lindelof, Wan-Bissaka right back. Midfield 3 of Fernandes, McTominay, Nemanja Matic and Rashford is up front with Greenwood. So that one kicks off very shortly. Before I let you go, this Qatar business. So Qatar to join Portugal, Serbia, Luxembourg, Azerbaijan. Do you have any great issue with this from a footballing point of view? Is this some cynical ploy to further legitimise Qatar, or is, just...
Well, I mean, that's what it ultimately comes down to. I mean, on a basic level, you could actually argue that, as with France in Euro 2016, let's not forget they did something very similar.
Yeah. So there is precedent. There is precedent.
Yeah, there is some precedent, and it balances out a group and just ensures, say, Ireland don't have two kind of more friendlies, if you know what I mean. There's a bit more extra. At the same time, as someone put to me today, it's difficult to, I mean, given that this involves Qatar going from Asia into UEFA, essentially, it's difficult to see how this would happen for any other country, except obviously, Qatar obviously have significant UEFA influence due to their ownership of Paris Saint-Germain. And I mean, we all know what this is all about. The whole Qatari football project is about soft power, be that the 2022 World Cup or the ownership of Paris Saint-Germain. And if you look at it from that perspective, I mean, in the year before they actually get to host FIFA's event, they're going to be involved in matches with UEFA countries, the CONCACAF Gold Cup, and they're involved in the CONMEBOL Copa America. 3 different federations outside their own federation before hosting the big one. I mean, it's pretty successful influence peddling, or more so visibility. So the project's working very well from that perspective. For all the questions about how it runs. Incredibly well.
I'm told Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has just been speaking to BT Sport. We'll have a quick listen.
In the midfield, no Paul Pogba. How much of that is to do with the comments made last night by his agent?
My decisions tonight is obviously tactical. That's the only thing. We made a team decision way bit before this game, because we decided on Scott and Nemanja in that midfield before we played West Ham. So always think about the best for the 11. It's a team selection.
Given the importance, how has it affected your preparations, if at all?
Nothing.
The indictment from a Pogba point of view is, I believe every single word of what Solskjaer just said. This is not like a Christian Eriksen situation at Spurs. Before you go, just to put on your Irish hat for a second. Stephen Kenny, last night, he's playing down Videogate, and he says the leaks were definitely not intentionally from the dressing room. But he said, I think there may be people behind the scenes or elsewhere who want to cause problems for the team. He was then asked if he knows who these people are, and Kenny said, listen, I've said enough. I mean, it was real, I've said too much. He said, that's all I'm willing to say. Would you interpret that, people behind the scenes, as people within the FAI?
Well, I mean, what else does behind the scenes mean? He
could have meant agents. Agents, I would have thought. Player says something to an agent gives it to the Mail.
This is the thing. I think that was one of the interesting things about the commotion around that story, and it was I remember seeing a lot of stuff about rat finding at the time. Whereas I think, especially when it comes to an Irish story appearing in an English newspaper in that way, I think it's less political than that. And I do genuinely think that would have been a case of a player or someone talking idly to an agent and an agent passing on that this story. I mean, obviously, I think there's two sides. Obviously, there was a complaint, but the complaint is separate to the personal feelings of whoever told their agent or how that spread. I think there's two separate dimensions to it. And weirdly, I mean, and again, this is pure speculation on my part. I would imagine the actual leaking of the story is more innocent. And obviously there are bigger questions about the complaints around the video. Although it was interesting, given how serious that story initially seemed. Remember that night, suddenly there's all sorts of people, oh, this could be big. And the more people you spoke to, the more ludicrous it seemed, and everyone was going about how there wasn't that much to it at all.
Yeah. I think it's hard in that press conference environment to go, hang on, Stephen, what exactly do you mean there behind the scenes? Are you talking about the people who launched the FAI investigation? Are you talking about agents? Are you talking about the person who leaked it? So we don't quite know. And obviously if it's somebody within the FAI who he feels is actively working against the team, then that's a huge story. Yeah,
completely, yeah. I mean, it's kind of the depressing politics that you would have associated with the FAI, even beyond the kind of the recent era. It feels like something out of the 60s and 70s, the petty backstabbing you used to always hear about.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I suspect he'll be asked to clarify that. Miguel, brilliant stuff. Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Cheers. That's Miguel Delaney of the London Independent. We'll take a short ad break.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. New normal, same old football. Paddy Power. Gamble responsibly. Gambling